And welcome everybody to the January 6th, 2022. Happy New Year, everyone. Board of Selectmen meeting, consistent with the governor's guidance of March, ready for this, 2020. We are conducting our meeting remote, and we are hopeful that in our third year of the COVID, we're going to go back to live meetings at some point in time. So please take care not to share your screens. Be mindful that the meeting is being recorded on Zoom. I am John Jeffries, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen. Bob Springett is here. Bob, would you be recognized as being present?
I'll think about it. This is Bob Springett here.
Chris Dwelly is here. Kate O'Brien is here. And Mona DeSillo is recording at home and taking copious minutes for us. Robin Hunter will be with us very shortly. And I guess I could also introduce Dr. Kay Peterson is with us this evening. Hi, Kay. How are you?
She's muted.
I was muted. Yeah. I'm fine. I'm tired of COVID.
Join the club. We have a club with forming.
Oh, good.
I don't even think you need to have a club. I think that's just consensus for everyone.
How do you get to talking about other things? It's just, you have to force yourself.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. You do.
It really is a case. Kate, do we have any citizens speak this evening?
None that have emailed me.
Okay. And Chris, anything preliminary that you would like to cover before Robin joins us?
No, sir.
Okay. Our first item on the agenda is going to be the Chief. Peter McGowan is going to join us. Chief, I know that you were listening as I was giving you a hard time about your advanced age. You don't have to comment.
And I won't.
He's unmuted.
So Chief, is Peg Crowley going to join or not?
She had planned on it. I'm not sure.
Yep, sorry, I see her. Yep.
Okay. So do you want me to jump right in?
I'm here.
Peg, are you here? Oh, you're here. Hi, Peg. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine, thank you.
How's Tom?
He's great. Thanks very much, John.
Please tell him we all said Happy New Year.
I will.
Peg, I don't know if you heard what I said earlier. We're just waiting. Yeah. We're going to wait about 30 more seconds for Robin. She's just running a bit behind. And then I'll just have the chief jump in to just give us an overview of the emergency management presentation.
Sounds good to me.
Thank you. Chief, why don't you go ahead and get started, and then Robin can join, and we can proceed if she has any questions we can fill in.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for the invite. I'm Chief Peter McGowan from the Dover Police Department. I'm been the chief a little over 10 years, and I've been the emergency management director for the same period of time. The emergency planning committee, local emergency planning group, is consistent right now of myself and Peg Crowley. Jim Repetti's available to us should we need any expertise in the ham radio for colossal communications failure or anything like that. But for the last 10 years or so, we've only activated the committee twice, I think, in the 10 years, and we are charged with kind of assisting the town or assisting townspeople in whatever type disaster comes up. Normally, snowstorms or floods are the main reasons why we would be pushed into action. So it's logical that the directorship would fall to me because it's usually my department and Chief Lutazi's fire department that would handle most anything that might come up. So we are stand ready to handle any type of issue that may come up. So that said, after some consideration, I was actually going to ask the board to consider dissolving the committee and just leaving it to the police chief, the fire chief, and the newly appointed DPW director, whoever that may be, because most any emergency that may come up is going to fall into one of our laps, whether it's roads or fire or police issues or storm related. Between the three of us, we'll probably be right in the middle of it anyway. So that's our committee in a nutshell.
Thank you. It's Chief, it seems to me pretty straightforward, and it's just in light of what Kate and I and Chris were just talking about at the very outset of this. The call this evening is schools have already been canceled, and when we think of the emergency preparation and the emergency management from a management standpoint, I think you just described the blessed trinity, if you will, of how we as a town and as a region have dealt with management and management crisis in times of crisis or in times of emergency. So I'm perfectly fine with it. Robin is with us if you are on a call and not on the video. So Robin has joined. So no questions from me. Bob, questions, comments?
Hey, Chief, when we had the COVID task force, the other people, the EMS group, it was Tim, right?
Yes.
Who represented the EMS side?
Correct, and that would all fall under Chief Lutazzi. If I needed something from EMS, I would deflect to him, and he would handle that. So it would basically be the three of us co-leading the response and delegating to whichever department would be best to handle whatever issue comes up.
And if you needed expertise from a different group, for example, the Board of Health, you would just pull them in.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Robin?
I don't have any questions or comments. I actually heard most of the chief's presentation, so thank you.
Great. Peg, was your involvement as a constable, or was there ever sort of a historical context of having a person in your capacity as a member of the management committee?
Yes, it was I don't remember how many years ago it was, but at the time that I became a member of emergency management, the head was Arthur Adams, who passed away several years ago. Mm-hmm. And there was a board, there were three people on the emergency management team. And it had to be at least 15 years ago. I should have looked up the date, but I didn't. But it has evolved over the years into a totally much more manageable and streamlined operation. So, I would agree with the chief that as we exist now doesn't make a lot of sense. And there were days in the past, many, many years ago, when we did open up the townhouse for people to sleep there. And we served a meal. We had many cots available for people to sleep. And I do remember being there one night when the power was out for people to sleep overnight. But I think that's all changed in the last few years.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, I would really, I think it's appropriate this time just to say, on behalf of the town of Dover, thank you very much for all your service, Peg, for all the things that you do for the elections and in all the capacities that you serve. So we really appreciate it, and I just would like to publicly say thank you for everything that you've done in the past and in light of these particular changes. Chris, would you like a motion from us and to make it official, or can we just accept Chief McGowan's recommendation?
We don't need an official vote or anything at this point. What I was planning on doing based on conversation with the board earlier in the summer as it relates to modernization was to compile a list of, if there are committees or entities who might be revisited or reconstituted. I'd compile that list for the board, and then we'd do the work on, what it takes. If it's a bylaw change, we'd have to structure that and bring it before town meeting. And essentially I'd compile everything for the board and then present it to you all as one package at that point. So that was how I was planning on proceeding. But if the board this evening would prefer to take a different approach, you certainly, have that and could make a vote this evening.
I'd be in favor of doing the way you just recommended. Robin, how do you feel?
I agree.
Bob?
Yeah, I think that that's right. And I don't know if Peg's still on or not.
Here.
Peg, that tradition of having a place where we can move people in emergencies will continue with the new Carroll building. That's also being fitted out as a shelter-in place in emergencies. So that tradition hopefully will move forward.
Excellent. Thank you, Bob.
Peg, again, from the Board of Selectmen, thank you very much. And on behalf of the town of Dover for all you do and everything that you've done and will continue to do. And Chief, in this new role, will you be doing some snow plowing this evening? Because they've already canceled school.
Not tonight. The snow isn't coming until tomorrow morning, but if he needs me. What number meeting house?
I just could not resist. You should start on Francis
Make sure
Street.
you get there about noon tomorrow.
If you start on Francis Street and take a left, you can get Bob's house, Robin's house, and Peg's house all on the same road.
Swoop.
Snow plow and lawn removal.
Yeah. Tom Crowley's tough on snowplow, so be on your best behavior. We are going to move on. Thank you both very much.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Item number 2 is a review of the annual town meeting warrant articles. And this is Chris Dwelly. Chris provided the 2022 annual town meeting warrant articles submitted to date. And with a reminder to everyone that the warrant closes on Friday, January 14th, 11 a.m. Chris?
Thanks, John. Not many changes to the warrant list since you saw it last 2 weeks ago. The major change that I would call your attention to at this point is the citizen petitions. The petitioners, all 3, came in to pick up their signature materials and the other materials that are needed to gather signatures and submit a citizen petition to the town clerk's office. So with that, I wanted to list out at this point the topic areas that they are focused on. So you'll see that in the warrant list that's included as part of your packet. One's on climate emergency resolution and resilience. The other is increasing the membership of the Board of Selectmen. And then third is to install sidewalks on Main Street and Dover Road. So the petitioners have until next week to submit their signatures, at which point the town clerk will review them, certify them, and if they've gathered 10 signatures, the petition will move forward, so long as the petitioner themselves doesn't withdraw their article. So that's the major change that I'd bring to your attention this evening. Unless there's any other questions that the board has, I'd let you know that, or would remind you that at your next meeting, you'll be finalizing the warrant. So 2 weeks time from now will be the final opportunity to include placeholders heading into the annual town meeting this May.
Great, thanks, Chris. And I just, having read, these 3 preliminary parts of the articles and have spoken with the sponsors, I just wanted to clarify one thing, Chris, is that with the sidewalk article, for the article, as I'm sure we on this call this evening are all aware, and for those that will watch this later, that the article has to be presented with funding, with a source of funding. And so have you have you had any discussion, Chris, with the proponents of the sidewalk article as to how they can determine the cost for funding and how that cost will be proposed for the warrant?
Yeah, so we went back to the last time that a sidewalk request was before town meeting, which I think was about 2007. And so in speaking with the petitioner and the town clerk and our interim highway superintendent, Bobby Tosi, the practice then, which is a practice that we plan to repeat, is that we work with the highway department to essentially measure out the anticipated length of sidewalk. And then the highway superintendent, with his knowledge of the cost for installation, puts forward an approximate cost. And then typically how to pay for that is just folded in as part of the broader financing budget conversation that the board, the warrant committee, and the town has as we head into town meeting. So that is the process that we plan to undertake.
Got it. Robin, Bob, question, comments?
Robin, do you want to go first?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so I have one question that pertains to this particular item, and then I have just something just discuss briefly. When we put in sidewalk and there's the initial installation, how do you provide? There's an ongoing maintenance cost, right? There's maintenance of the thing; it has to be plowed when you have snow, et cetera, et cetera. Is the ongoing maintenance of sidewalks that we put in, is that included, or is it just sort of assumed as part of the ongoing responsibilities of the highway department?
I imagine it's just been the ongoing maintenance costs just get folded into the ongoing annual operational costs of the department.
Yeah, because I don't think there hasn't been too many requests.
Right, and Bob, and I know from past experience, that's exactly, there was no need to increase the highway budget or the personnel to maintain the sidewalks. But
yeah, Robin, that was from just outside center of town to like Carroll Park or something. It was pretty small.
Right, but there's also one on, I believe it's Glen Street. There is also a sidewalk over there. And
Did they put that in recently?
I think that was the 2007. I think that was the most recent. I don't know. I'm going from memory, but that was also a pretty recent one.
I do remember it coming up. I don't remember the outcome.
I believe I'm going from memory driving down Glen Street, and I believe there's a sidewalk there.
Yeah, well, I trust your
But
memory.
since I don't get out of the house much anymore, I could be wrong.
So you are right. There is one on the left-hand side.
Thank you, John.
Yes.
That's why we have three guys. So the other, this is premature, and I understand that it's premature, but there's a lot on the plate.
Yeah, that was my observation too.
And when we get into, at some point in time, when we talk with Jim, we're going to get into length of meeting, et cetera. And for me, from what I know, and this is pretty high level stuff, the planning board stuff is pretty complex. And should we consider taking something like the planning board stuff and moving it into a second meeting, similar to how we did Carroll as a second meeting, and then leave the primary meeting or the first meeting or however we want to set it up for sort of quote normal town business? Is that something we should put up as a consideration?
I think that's an important.
So I think everything is open for consideration. I think once these articles are on the warrant and written, and the education process goes through as well, that's also something we should think about. And then I think we should really talk to the planning board. I'm sure the planning board is going to have a lot of public outreach on these articles, and based upon feedback, we can also make a determination as to whether or not it makes sense to have more than one town meeting, given everything we have on the warrant. And I think it's more complicated because you have to go through the warrant articles then, and perhaps you have to say, well, we can have a certain category in the one meeting and another category in the second meeting. But, you know, I do believe it's a good point, and I think it's something we should talk about, and we should think about it, you know, with the moderator and the assistant moderator, and talk about the pros and cons of having one very long town meeting. You know, I was approached by some people who also wanted us to consider Saturday town meetings. They felt that the Carroll town meeting was very easy for people to get to. They could arrange for babysitters. I know Park and Rec and all the sports, the youth sports, made a point of not having events on that Saturday morning so that parents could attend. You know, a couple of younger citizens have said if the meetings were on a Saturday, they could make arrangements so that both of them could attend rather than just one. So, you know, there are a lot of things that are worth having discussions about right now, and maybe not for this town meeting, maybe for future town meetings, we make other changes or consider other changes.
I agree. I agree with all of the above. There are a lot of considerations. You know, we will have to have, you know, the inevitable with both Kay and Carol on this call this evening. We'll have to have the inevitable conversation of the impact of, you know, the public health situation at the time, how we are doing, what's the relative risk of transmissions of COVID, blah, 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 all the things that we, I think, have done an exceptional job with over these past 2 years. And
our unofficial town historian, AKA Carol Lisbon, noted in the comments that she's confirming there is a sidewalk on Glen Street, and she said it is standalone and disconnected, but it was approved at town meeting because of bus stops. It was, and she is right. Thank you, Carol.
It services Yorkshire. It goes from Yorkshire on one side to the Tiss's house on the other end. I can't remember.
And I think there was nowhere for kids to stand safely when they were being picked up. So.
Yeah, and Glen is a busy street,
right?
Especially rush hours.
Right.
A lot of traffic.
So,
sort of teeing up this discussion around town meeting, is it just going to leave it between Chris and Jim at the moment?
I'm sorry, Bob, I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, sorry. In sort of putting this discussion or these items around May town meeting on the agenda, is it something that we should ask Chris and Jim, and Chris could talk to Jim Rapetti about sort of keeping tabs on?
Yeah, definitely. You know, not to put the cart before the horse, but we really should wait until the 14th, you know, to see what articles actually materialize, what articles may not materialize. I had a long conversation with with James Stewart with regards to his article, and we had a lot of conversation about really what the intent of that article is. It is probably a lot less controversial than it may appear to be, right? It's much more of a deep dive into something that we have done in the past, and part of what we're undertaking right now in our whole review of town structure and modernization. So there are, you know, I think we should wait. I think we should wait until the 14th, let the warrant close, see exactly where we are, and then, you know, get the understanding of what hail, which is going to be a big item that we have to address, how that is going to impact just as you said, Bob and Robin, actually you were both alluded to the same thing, the time and the energy it's going to take to address these particular warrant articles. So
So
Are you okay with that?
I did say that I thought that I said this was sort of premature, so I agree. I just want to make sure because it can be complex. And one of the things that I know happens amazingly fast is sand going through that hourglass.
Yes, it really does.
So Bob, I don't think anything is premature. I don't think there's any harm in beginning to think about planning for different types of scenarios. And, it may be a good idea to put that small working group together, that's headed by Jim Rapetti, and just beginning to talk about these various issues and, to see what potential plans could be if all the warrant articles land up.
Yeah. I agree with that, Robin. And I think that from Jim's standpoint, from the standpoint also of Board of Health and Dr. Peterson, that we have a lot more knowledge right now. We really do know how well things have gone for us as it relates to town meeting and what has worked really well. And then, of course, Chief McGowan holding back the thunderstorms really worked in our favor for one of the meetings. So
well, you had practice when he parted the Red Sea.
I thought that was Carol Lisbon, that part of the Red Sea. All right, let's move on. The next item is Chris's report, goals and objectives, the 6-month update on fiscal 2022 goals and objectives. Chris?
Thanks, John. I put together a slide deck for the board and for everyone this evening to quickly run through, and Kate's bringing that up at the moment, and this will be posted on the website under the town's goals and projects webpage so that the community can follow along and see the latest in terms of our progress so far in fiscal year 22. All right, thanks, Kate. So you're familiar with this presentation. It's the same structure. I'll try to run through everything in a somewhat quick pace, but we'll cover the main points. So overall, on the first slide, you see a summary of all of the board's goals, along with the focus areas, and then the summary status of where we are as it relates to the midpoint of the fiscal year. Overall, my assessment is that we're in a pretty good place and we're moving along at a good clip, and should be able to accomplish most, if not all, of the board's goals and the focus areas before the end of June. So I've structured the presentation just again in order of the board's goal areas, and I'll quickly run through each of the focus areas to give you a little bit of an update on the accomplishments that we've made to date, as well as some of the key next steps that will help us accomplish these goals and bring them across the finish line for the next 6 months of the year. So starting out, there are a few areas in land use and open space. The first is our long-term water resource efforts. Kate, if you wouldn't mind just scrolling down to that slide. So we've done quite a bit of work in this area so far to date. A lot of really great work has been done by the team, the staff team, and by the community. A few things that I just want to highlight for the board this evening is that a lot of the work so far has been, I guess, twofold. One has been focused on communication, and the second primary area has been focused on setting up a foundation for our long-term water efforts. So on the communication front, there's a lot of work done this year. Things like creating just a standalone water resource webpage for people to be able to access information about all things water, whether it be under the town's purview or one of our public-private water suppliers like Colonial, as well as have just a resource for people to access documents and everything else. So that's been really helpful. As part of that, there was also a Water Wednesdays campaign, whose intent was to provide kind of educational updates and materials for the community on the importance of all things water in Dover and how everything is interconnected. We got a lot of really great feedback from that campaign, and we look forward to picking it back up as we start to head into irrigation season, which will be here before we know it. In terms of long-term future planning, there were two primary efforts that we've made some good headway in so far this year. The first is putting together RFQ for a long-term water resource consultant and issuing that RFQ. We do have responses in from prospective consulting firms, and we're just waiting on one final appointment to the board's water resource task force. And once that appointment is made, that task force will convene, and their first charge will be to interview the consultant candidates who have submitted a response to RFQ and select a consultant for the town to engage in. I think the focus of those interviews will certainly be the consultant's qualifications and experience, but also, who's the best fit, who's the right fit for Dover. Moving on from the RFQ, the other big important piece is one that has been discussed for some time, and that's about a drought irrigation bylaw. And so we've drafted a draft drought irrigation bylaw based off of the state's template. Right now, that is being reviewed by our on-call water consultant, Kleinfelder. And after their review, that will be brought before the Water Resources Committee for their review and discussion and input. And then will be presented to the Board of Selectmen for your essentially blessing on if you'd like to move forward with the town putting forward a drought irrigation bylaw at this year's town meeting. The team has preliminarily started to put together some public educational materials should the board decide to want to move forward, so that we have enough time to be able to share with the community the intent of the bylaw and what it's all about. Our next steps from a water perspective, one I mentioned, that's interviewing the water consultants and making a selection, and hope to do that by February. And then also the presenting of the drought irrigation bylaw to the Water Resources Committee and to the board. So those are the major next steps as it relates to water efforts for this particular year. We're also doing a lot of work, as the board knows, with Aquarian Water Company, who's acquired Colonial Water Company, and the existing discoloration, water issues, and the DEP's corrective action plan. That's, I view that more as a short-term effort as opposed to our long-term focus here. The second focus area under the board's goal around land use and open space, Kate, on the next slide, is around open space funding opportunities. We've done some work here to be able to pull together all of the grant opportunities that exist, whether they be federal grants or state grants or other type of funding opportunities that communities can leverage as they look to purchase, acquire, and preserve open space. That work has been done. It's really helpful. There's a lot of information that's included in this grant matrix, not only the entity in which you can apply for the grant, but also important things such as requirements around matching funds or other policies or plans that need to be in place before a town is eligible to apply for these funds. Our next steps around this effort will be to finalize research on other municipal open space fund structures. I know the town in the past has referenced some North Shore communities and that they've done some interesting things around open space preservation. So we just want to kind of take that work and continue to build on it and put that into the final overview and recommendation to the board. And then really the last piece is to tie all those two pieces together and any other funding sources that might be available, such as the CPA, and put all those into an overview and a package of recommendations for the board's consideration. The next focus area 3, is on the Hale Reservation Task Force. So things have really picked up this fiscal year with the Hale efforts and with the Hale Task Force. We were able to get the appraisal of the property finalized with the appraiser. We were able to have a few robust conversations with the task force on the appraisal. The second piece that we've been focused on with the task force is developing out a list of community opportunities to coincide with the conservation restriction, which is what's been proposed by Hale. These are things such as, are there areas of the Hale property that might be beneficial for the community to not conserve? Things like expansion opportunities for the transfer station potentially in the future, or even things like storage of water tanks or water infrastructure or water resources. There are other things that are kind of less infrastructure heavy, such as, are there programmatic opportunities that Hale can provide to Dover residents as part of this transaction, as part of this effort. So those conversations and that dialogue is ongoing with Hale, with the Hale folks and the leadership. They've been very receptive so far to our conversations. And we're really at the point now where it's, I view it as getting a good sense of what a final proposal could look like for the community should the Hale Task Force and the Board of Selectmen decide to take a recommendation and move forward with it. So our next steps, again, is to finalize the conversations with Hale. These also include partnership opportunities. There's been a lot of conversation as it relates to what other partners might come to the table, whether that be in a financial piece or whether that be in a kind of conservation facilitation type of arrangement, such as the trustees, right, being the kind of overseers or the caretakers of the CR. There's just a lot of intricate and moving pieces as it relates to putting together something like this. So we want to make sure that we've covered all our bases and had all our conversations before a recommendation is made. And then
So,
also,
Chris, I think it would be really helpful maybe at one of our next meetings, just to kind of put together a presentation or a timeline of what has happened, what is ongoing, because this is all great information that you're giving us. If we're looking for a recommendation at some point, I think it would be really helpful to begin to have the discussion at these meetings, so that I know John is very attuned to what's going on, but I know it would be helpful for me just to kind of get an overview of what has happened, what has been completed, what we think the next steps are. Even, it doesn't have to be a full package with a bow around it, but just so that we can start to think about this.
sure. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And in fact, we have a task force meeting on the 11th. So that's actually one of the things I'll actually, charge the task force with that, and maybe have some members come to your next meeting on the 20th and be part of that conversation, that presentation.
Right. I think if this is truly something that we think is ready to go to town meeting, we need to make sure that we've asked all the questions and we know exactly where we stand and what we're asking or recommending for the town to do. For instance, I would like to understand, because this is not just a town of Dover leadership thing. It's actually being led by Hale, and then you have Westwood and Dover that they're asking to contribute to this cause. So I think it's important to understand, where Hale is on their ask, and then also what Westwood is doing. Because I think all these pieces are part of this puzzle. And I want to make sure that I understand what the status is of each of the pieces.
Okay.
So I just add, Chris, that just borrowing from someone else who had a very complex interrelated project. The Phil, our project manager for Carroll, starts every meeting with a timeline, and it shows all the steps along the path that they're going. And it is an incredibly easy way to follow what's been done, where we're at, and what remains to be done going forward, and what the target dates are for each of those things. And I remember, I don't know, it must be a year or so ago now, when the guys from Hale came to talk to us, and it was a really pretty straightforward thing. They were looking for a way to build essentially endowment of about 20 for the endowment. They were asking for 10 million each from Dover and Westwood to self-fund their programs, et cetera, in perpetuity. And and then we would, for the money, we would get conservation restrictions on the land and keep the land as open space. So it seemed to be a pretty straightforward deal. The next step that I remember was we tried to value the conservation restriction. I think that's been done. And then I think and of course through time, things change. We had a town approve a $19 million bonding fund for Carroll. I understand Westwood has a number of public projects on the agenda, and it really I think I take Robin's point, it really would be a good time to sort of say, where are we now? And how is this what seemed to be a very simple proposition from Hale's point of view, how it's progressed, what some of the curves have been, what some of the considerations have been, and what's the target date for a recommendation that we as a board can take under consideration and act on. So I think it's the right thing to do as well.
Yeah. We'll work on putting that together. I think it'll be what will be helpful for the task force at that time. We will tee up to the Board of Selectmen as part of the presentation what has come up and what we think are what the task force thinks are some areas that would be important to be able to address before what they're planning for is before a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. And it'd be good to have a dialogue at that meeting from the board to get a good sense of where the board is at in terms of, hey, we understand what's happened. Now we've been updated with where Westwood is, with Hale, everyone else. Now we know the path that the task force is taking place and whether or not you want to pivot from that, because that'll be an important piece of feedback for the task force to hear. So we'll make sure that we cover all those key points so that you have as much information as possible. I'll shoot for the 20th and we'll take it from there.
Great, thank you.
Great, thanks, Chris. Chris, I just think that just to sort of to tie this item that you've just covered in depth, the questions that Robin and Bob and the comments are extremely on focus and timely for this. I'd just like to tie it together with what we were just discussing on the last item, and that's the subject of how do we frame this in along the same line of town meeting. Where do we put this in the town meeting agenda? And also, I think it's critically important for us as the Board of Selectmen to also frame this timeline with what we can control. Because Robin points out, Bob points out, the Open Space Committee, we have really thoroughly taken a deep dive, had lots of very lively conversations about this over the past 3 months, specifically is what we can, and most importantly, cannot control with regards to this ask in regards to the financial condition of Hale that has been the genesis of this process. So that is extremely important as we begin to focus on how do we set this properly and frame it properly in the context of what we can control and ask and what we should control and ask from the town of Dover.
Agreed, John. Agreed.
All right. So I'll move on to the next focus area, which is around climate vulnerability. So a lot of our focus at this stage has been around planning and identifying what our hazards and vulnerable assets are. The planning board is the facilitator and updating and finalizing the town's hazard mitigation plan. I understand that this is almost set and ready for the Board of Selectmen's review and approval in the coming weeks. And there's also been a lot of work done primarily on the planning board side and with our town planner to really put the pieces together from a planning sense for us to be able to apply for and be eligible for federal climate dollars. So that once we have a sense of what our priority areas are, that we're able to put together some really comprehensive financing plans to be able to take care of those items. So next steps, you'll have a presentation on your hazard mitigation plan in the coming weeks. And then what I've asked our town planner and our DPW director, who we hope to have on board soon, is to take that hazard mitigation plan, take our other plans, our municipal vulnerability preparedness plan, our open space plan, all of our other planning efforts, and really kind of meld those all together into kind of one matrix so that the town can see what our priority areas are, what our actual projects are from a priority standpoint, and then also some funding opportunities to be able to start to move forward on addressing them. The next goal area for the board, I believe my memory serves me correctly here before we switch slides, is around financial planning. All right. And the first focus area is around continuing to implement our financial best practices and modernization efforts, primarily in the back of house within our finance department. So a couple of things I just want to highlight for is that we've made some really good progress in starting to modernize our internal processes to move away from paper-based processes and redundant processes that were taking a lot of time and that were really just outdated, unnecessary, and shifting those to leverage our applications that we have in place. So for instance, all of our departments now are trained directly to enter their AP through the town's financial system. Before that, there were a lot of duplicate and redundant spreadsheets that would go back and forth from departments to departments to the different finance departments. And now this all just goes right into the application from department's desktop and goes right over to the finance team, who's able to make sure that everything is accounted for correctly, warrants get processed and paid. We're also doing the same, as you know, around our time and attendance. So there's a lot of things that we're doing there. We're shifting away from paper-based paper-based timekeeping to electronic timekeeping. But we're also doing some things that are, really important and save a lot of time that you don't see. Things such as integrating that payroll data directly into our general ledger VADAR application, so that again, there's not a download or an output coming from one application that then has to get manually input to another application. So they seem like small things, but they're really helpful in moving us forward to a more modern operation, and frees up our finance team to be able to focus on some more higher value tasks. The one thing that we're focused on for the next couple of months is to continuing to roll out our reporting. We rolled out our expense reports last year. Our revenue reports are all set now, and the last piece of kind of key core reporting is our special article reporting. So that really completes the full picture of kind of what finances and what funds are available to departments in real time throughout the year. On the next slide, we get into our reserve policies, which are a big key priority area. The first is around developing a capital reserve and debt management policy. I'm happy to say that has been completed. Nice job, Robin. And we are awaiting the free cash reserve, which is on the next slide, to finish their work, at which point we'll merge the two groups, because the free cash reserve influences the capital reserve and the capital reserve influences the free cash. And so we want to make sure that there's cohesion between those two policies before they finally go before the full capital budget warrant committee and Board of Selectmen for approval. So the next slide is the free cash policy. I gave Robin a kudos. So Bob, kudos for nearing completion on the free cash policy, but the capital group got it done first.
How come it says not yet started?
Yeah, but we still have our discussion to have with the other group. We're in agreement on our side.
So we've got our meeting with the free cash group on Tuesday, and we've got a lot of data and information, and we're very close to, I shouldn't speak for the group, but from my senses, we're pretty close to getting a final finished product. The next area is a different goal, is around the town governance structure. This is the first goal was to support Dover's volunteer base. And there are a couple of interesting things that have been done and being worked on. The first is, you saw this at the beginning of the meeting, where there's a new kind of structure where boards and committees are coming before the Board of Selectmen. Really provides them an opportunity to highlight all the great work and good work that they're doing, and it helps ensure cohesion between all of the entities doing all this great work in the community. The other thing that's been really great is the community newsletter that's been published monthly. I think we'll be going on our 3rd issue next month. Ruth Townsend's done an incredible job in putting this together and working with a lot of the board and committees to really draw and solicit some really great, important community-based information. K2 is a key player in this effort, and couldn't be done without her as well. The other things actually that Kate is working on is putting the finishing touches on a volunteer website. This will be kind of a volunteer portal, which will be full of all sorts of resources for existing and prospective volunteers. So it'll show committee vacancies. It'll show, what committees the town has, what their charges are, what they do. And it'll also be a nice resource for existing committee members as it relates to policies, procedures, resources such as MMA trainings and other information that they might find valuable and useful. And then the last thing.
Chris, excuse me, do you mean website or web page?
Page, site? I use those in
your website.
Yep. I use those interchangeably. So web page, website, it'd be on the doverma.gov website.
Thank you.
Yep. And then the last thing that I'm hopeful that we can still do, but we'll see where the year takes us with COVID, is to start an annual volunteer appreciation event that would take some sort of structure like a breakfast or a lunch, where the Board of Selectmen helps host all of the community-based volunteers and recognizes all their work, and with a nice informal breakfast or some get-together or gathering. So we're working on some options that we can put together, and we're just seeing, hopefully, again, where our COVID environment takes us. The next focus area, and I'm almost done here, is around our project manager recruitment. We talked about this with the board about repurposing an outdated position into a project manager position. We were able to create and post it, and I've had great difficulty, as have many organizations in Massachusetts and throughout the country, in identifying and recruiting candidates. We're going to continue to put our heads together on how best to move forward with this, and we'll come back to the board with an update on what we're thinking. But we're disappointed that indirect and direct inquiries didn't result in a candidate. So I think we're going to have to go back to the drawing board on this particular position. The next area is the creation of a Department of Public Works. Similar to the project manager position, we created and posted a DPW director position, and we are in the final stages of recruitment. We do have a candidate identified, and we're working through the particulars and the logistics of that. Hope to have a candidate to present to the board in the coming weeks. We hope everything works out and we're able to onboard them in the next month or so, and that'll allow them to really begin implementation of the formal DPW structure that the board has talked about, and that was also similarly laid out in the community paradigm study that was done last year. On the next slide, Kate, is a multi-year planning document. One of the board's considerations and discussions last year was ensuring that we were able to, from a project management standpoint, capture all of our important work and the steps associated with it in order to accomplish it, but also having a kind of a lasting document, both for existing participants in Dover's town government, but also those who come after us to see, kind of what we've done and where we're heading. And so, I like my presentation format here, but sometimes this doesn't lend itself always to a good kind of linear overview of all the work that's being done. So we procured smart sheets thanks to the feedback from a board member and a board member's spouse to leverage that as our digital goals presentation medium. Internally, Dave and some staff have done a really good job of setting that up, both for our existing projects, but also taking all of the board's priority areas, goals, and accomplishments over the past 4 years and putting them into the application. What's nice about Smart Sheets is we've also been able to leverage that for other opportunities, such as the water monitoring dashboard that's on the webpage, which has been a great help for people. So we're going to continue to build that out, and we'll have something to present to you. Maybe I won't give a PowerPoint presentation at year end. Maybe it will be the Smart Sheet digital presentation, but it'll also be a nice medium that we can embed on the website for people to follow along and dig in and, find accompanying information that's referenced in a lot of these PowerPoints that we discuss. Bob?
I just want to make sure that people know that the Board of Selectmen member you mentioned is not me. I think my wife and Robin, sort of concurred on the event on the use of spreadsheet. I was just an innocent bystander.
All right.
I was wondering if Dave Sullivan's ears were ringing the other day because I was telling my team how he has embraced it and they should take a look at some of the output he has created.
Oh, good.
And I said, and if you want to talk to him, I can arrange that. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Robin, and to Cindy for the recommendation. Next slide, Kate. And I promise we're getting to the end here. Last goal around modernization. The first priority area was to investigate digital transformation with TAB. There's been a lot of work done that Bob's been focused on with TAB members and others in the community and reassessing the TAB's role or an entity like the TAB as a means to provide the town with access to technical expertise. Those conversations are ongoing. At this point, I'd say that the TAB in its current form is on hiatus, but there are continued ongoing conversations about what a future reconstituted entity might look like. And there was also a lot of work done to research digital transformation. This was a lot of private sector work as well as public sector municipal efforts. And the digital transformation, I was happy to hear back that a lot of the things that the board's been focused on the past few years, at least from a municipal standpoint, put us right on par, if not above, a lot of the community's efforts and what's being done in other municipal communities. So I think a lot of the focus as it relates to a TAB or a reconstituted TAB is, once we get to that perfect 100%, from a municipal standpoint, how do we take it to the next level? So a few next steps along with, figuring that out is to continue to build our digital tool portfolio. I talked a little bit about some of the, the efforts around finances and time and attendance, which we've talked about. We have budgeted for that. I presented to the board a few weeks ago, our new, quote unquote, electronic city hall for FY23. This is a new application that essentially provides residents the opportunity to conduct town business, such as applying for licenses, things like that, to do that digitally at home rather than having to come into the townhouse if they so choose. And then we're also going to finalize our digital roadmap. This is also in part with the prior goal as it relates to smart sheets about, hey, here's all the work that's been done to transform our processes as well as to introduce new technology, and what else is on the horizon. And that will allow us to kind of move pieces around to identify priorities and figure out where everything fits in the big picture. On the next slide, and this is the second to last, is on our website assessment. So one of the things that we wanted to do is, of course, when we switched platforms, wanted to make sure that this was kind of a live, not a live document, but a living thing that we continue to build upon and iterate upon. So we are tracking our website metrics. Now, we always had the ability to track our website metrics, but we're reviewing and downloading that information each month. And that allows us to get a sense of kind of visitor preferences. What are the most popular pages? How long do people stay on pages? What are the bounce rates, clicks, to give us better insight into how people are using the website. And all that information, along with some other future efforts like public surveys and conversations with the board and others, will help inform kind of what our phase 2 website will look like. So what we're doing is we're trying to lay the foundation to start to build and move toward that phase 2. And one of the things I think that is really important for us to focus on at this point that we're thinking about is to think differently about how we structure a municipal website. Typically, it's structured in how governments are structured. But aside from, the 10 people on this call, most people don't know, right, where a particular license application is under a certain department, or they don't know that this committee is responsible for this public service. So we want to shift it to be less about kind of how we structure and how we know government, but more about what a user who has no idea about government but is looking for a service or information from the town can more easily find it. So that'll be our kind of user-centered focus as we move forward into the next phase of the website. And then the last focus area is around document management and digital processes. Again, a lot of this relates to some of the earlier slides, but I just wanted to emphasize and reiterate the finalization of a kind of a multi-year digitization roadmap, so that we can map out and see again where we've come from and where we are and where we're going, and then also starting to put the pieces together. Should the funding for this electronic city hall, I'll have to come up with a better word for it or better phrase for it, is funded, so that we can prepare to kind of hit the ground running next fiscal year with the implementation of that. So I took much longer than I anticipated. I always do. I apologize. But there's been a lot of great work that so many people in the community and the organization have done. And it's awesome to be a part of it. And, I'm always privileged to be able to have, or I'm always happy to have the privilege to be able to share just a small glimpse of all the great work that's being done in town.
So just one comment. After you explained what you meant about Electronic City Hall, I said, that's a cool name. So before you explained it, I had no idea what you were talking about. So maybe we should have a competition.
Yes.
Robin, ECH is ECK. You don't want to talk about ECK. We need something better.
All right, and that's it.
Well,
Well done.
thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Bob, comments?
No, I think that, it's always good to do this on a quarterly basis. It reminds us of the breadth and scope of work that people are undertaking, and managing to move forward in a challenging environment, right? Since March of 20, we've been dealing with COVID. We continue to deal with COVID. It is disruptive. And I think it's a pretty good piece of work. It'd be better on Smartsheet, but right now, it's okay. Oh,
Robin?
on the, just while I'm thinking about it, on the website data, is Kate going to do a sort of a synopsis or a summary for us over the next couple of meetings?
Yep.
Good. No, I thought it was well done. A little long, but well done.
Robin?
I thought it was a great update, and just, we don't say it enough, but thank you to the townhouse staff and all the employees of Dover, because this doesn't get done by one person, it's a team. So thank you all.
Totally
And they're
agree.
making us look good, so thank you.
We look marvelous.
Just a couple of quick comments from me, Chris. Again, echo what Bob and Robin have said. It's timely. It's important. It's really important for us to be able to be reminded of all the layers of things in the continuum of these things that we've started, programs, processes, reinventions, and it's important to see how the progression happens. Just a couple of notes and things that I wrote down while you were speaking is with regards to just one thing that jumped out at me that you mentioned, Chris, about the North Shore communities. It's Essex and Hamilton, and I know that you had asked that earlier, and I didn't know if I responded to that in time. So the two North Shore towns that we talked about, Essex and Hamilton, who have done this. And Chris, will the appraisal process for Hale, are we going to publish that anywhere?
Yes, part of the task force's efforts are to take all of the presentations, the appraisal, all the information, and put it all on the web. And a lot of that foundational work right now is being done to get us ready to have it all kind of posted and published.
Great. And with regards to the climate initiative, has the planning board met with the petition, with the warrant article, article proposal?
Yeah, I don't know. That wasn't conveyed to me, but looks like we still have the planning board chair with us.
Carol, are you still here?
I am. Could you repeat the question, please?
Carol, with regards to the climate initiative, the warrant article that is addressing a climate initiative, have you or has anybody from your board met with the petitioners?
No, I have absolutely no idea what that is. Tonight's the first time I've heard of it.
Okay.
It's possible that Courtney has, but I have not heard anything about it.
Okay.
The only thing, John, I heard is I thought it was sort of a school initiative.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's correct.
That is correct. That is correct. So, Chris, thank you. Thank you very much. It's a very comprehensive, really well done presentation, and there's a lot there. There's a lot in progress. It's a lot of many members of your staff and the team working very hard to keep these items going, and we really appreciate that. So thank you. There's no other discussion. We're going to move on to our next article, our next item, which is the COVID-19 rapid test kit discussion, potential vote. I'd like to reintroduce everyone to Dr. Kay Peterson, who is the chair of the Board of Health. And Dr. Peterson, the floor is yours.
I'm not the chair, right?
You're not the chair.
I'm not the chair. Mr. Clark is the chair.
Jerry is the chair. Well,
yes. Dr. Clark is the chair.
Dr. Clark is the chair.
Professor. My role is leading the COVID response. So I'm here to talk to you about a specific COVID problem, which I'm sure you've read about to some extent, and that is the shortage of rapid testing kits, and also known as antigen tests. The most the most well-known is Abbott Binax now. Are you all familiar with what I'm talking about with these tests? So they are in short supply. People are struggling to get them. And because of this, the state has contracted with a number of vendors who make these tests to and has contracted so that municipalities and also nonprofits in the state may purchase at a discounted rate from these vendors. There are many vendors, and some of them are not yet approved, but will be shortly. And my understanding is that a few more came online this week and were approved, that after only 3 were available last week. The goal is for municipalities to purchase these and then distribute them as they see fit to the residents of the towns and cities. You probably know that the state bought and distributed many of these kits to municipalities of where income levels were significantly lower than the mean in the state. But this now is an opportunity for other towns and cities to buy. So the Board of Health is interested in doing this because we see a need, in particular right now, for the schools and the childcare centers. There probably is a pretty significant need among seniors as well, who have trouble shopping online and aren't so good at refreshing their browsers every 5 minutes when they're trying to find something. And those are the groups that we are thinking at this point anyway that we'd like to target. The schools are very interested in having us see if we can do this, because though they are getting some test kits from DESE, they're not getting enough, and they would like to expand testing in the schools. I could go into it in detail, but I think it would be too complicated and not worthwhile. But so our Board of Health and the Sherborne Board of Health are both wanting to do this. These test kits could be purchased with ARPA funds. They can't be purchased with FEMA funds, but ARPA funding is fine to use for them. It's interesting, each Board of Health on its own came up with the figure of purchasing about 1,000 test kits, each of which includes 2 tests. And that we would then, once we'd ordered them, figure out exactly how we might distribute, but go ahead and if we get approval from our boards of selectmen, then go ahead and place the orders and then start working on the details of distribution. The prices are, I think Kate may be able to talk more about the prices, but from what I've seen, the prices are probably around $9 or $10 a test, meaning $20 a kit, something like that. Though there's quite a bit of variability, and it depends, of course, on how much you order. Kate, I wonder, you prepared a spreadsheet or forwarded a spreadsheet of the vendors that are currently offering these. Do you want to add anything to this?
No, I think you covered it. They range from, $6 to $20 a test. So,
and it's not clear to me whether they mean per test or per kit. They say test, but so often people will say test and actually mean kit. So we'll have to figure that out as we order. But
the spreadsheet that I got from the state actually does say, as far as which brand, how many tests come in a kit. And I would say the majority of them, 2 tests come in 1 kit.
Yeah.
And the spreadsheet specifically says per test.
Yeah, it does.
Right. And I can tell you, I managed to buy some iHealth antigen test kits, and it was $17.99 for one kit. So this is a very good price for those.
Yep.
And there were 2 tests in a kit.
Yeah. So I think this would be a valuable thing to do, particularly because it would help. Using antigen tests can help people who are infected, who want to leave isolation early, because it can help them determine whether they're infectious at that time or not. And they're also very helpful for some people who have symptoms, because if the test is positive, then it's very likely that the person has COVID. But obviously, if you have symptoms and a negative antigen test, you need to get a PCR test because it's much more accurate at that time. So the goal is to reduce the number of people who are walking around spreading COVID, particularly in the schools where too much spread threatens the ability of classrooms to stay open. This is also true in the childcare centers.
Okay, have we seen that since the restart, or is it too early?
You mean seen a closed classroom?
Yeah, in schools, have we seen anything happening yet?
So today there were 25 cases in the schools, new cases. That's a record breaker by far. What we don't know is what it was the day before, because of the way that DESE wanted the data reported. They lumped everything through January 5th together with what came in over the break. So it's a little bit
misleading, maybe.
Yeah, it's hard to know. I mean, there were well over 100 cases between December 24th and January 5th, but it's not broken down by day yet. That will become available. But I have to tell you that the nursing staff in the schools is pretty overwhelmed, and at this point they've conferred with the boards of health and with Alyssa Kaiser, and have decided not to contact trace in the schools if they don't have enough time. They're doing their best, but they are not going to be able to do it very much right now. Their goal is to get everybody who's symptomatic tested and out of school, and talk to them about how long they need to be out of school, and try to get them to test starting on day 5 to test out of isolation. We do have something very exciting that's emerged in the past 24 hours. There's a Dover resident named Dave Adams, who is the CEO of a group of AFC urgent care centers. I don't know, do any of you know him? He's a neighbor of mine, a really lovely guy. And in the fall of 2020, he stepped forward and provided a pathway for our symptomatic students in the schools to get rapid PCR testing same day. And then he stepped forward just this week and asked if there was any way he could be of help with testing. His company does not do this for other schools, but he has 3 kids in the schools, and he's quite interested in seeing things stay open. So he is, just in the past 48 hours, the schools have developed an arrangement with him for a mobile testing unit that will be at the schools 3 days a week, probably for an hour and a half or 2 each of those 3 days. It'll test people, it'll bill insurance. People will have to work that out, but there'll be no charge to the schools or the town. But the plan is to have this testing available for any resident of Dover and Sherburne, any town employee, and any school employee. And obviously the students would come first in terms of priority, but the goal would be to try to open it up to all these people on these 3 days. So I'm very encouraged about that. So I think
I think that's, I would be as well. Yeah, that sounds terrific.
So anecdotally, one of the things that's happening that's really been distressing is that the nurses are learning about kids who are symptomatic, whose parents are sending them to school as a way of getting them tested because there's no other way they can easily get them tested. They could if they wanted to. It's not as if testing is impossible to find, but you often have to go and wait in line for several hours to get a test. And the path of least resistance is, for some families, is viewed as sending the kid to school. And of course, if you come to school when you're symptomatic, you're more likely to spread infection.
Kay, do you have any idea of the capacity that Mr. Adams' mobile unit will provide?
I don't. Somebody does, but I can't remember what it is. I'm not even sure I've heard, but he can to some extent, I think, flex it a little bit. But he's also short-staffed, so he can't spare a lot of staff. He's got plenty of equipment. He has unlimited tests, but it's the staff that the staff will be the rate limiting factor.
Mm-hmm. With 1,000 test kits and the rate that you are seeing the test happening now, how long will 1,000 kits last?
We have no idea. That's a really good question, John. And this is really a crapshoot. We basically all said, okay, everybody imagine a number that you think might be useful. And we kind of came up with 1,000 kits, just thinking that we don't want to run out. We don't want to have too few, but we also don't want to have too many either. And here are the variables. How long will it take to get the kits, right? We don't know that.
How long does it take to get test results back?
Well, these are rapid tests that will come back instantly or in 15 minutes. But how long will it take for the order to be processed and for us to take delivery? And what will have happened to Omicron in that time? If it takes 4 weeks for these to be shipped, Omicron may be not quite a thing of the past, but we may be really seeing a lot of improvement by then. So it's a bit of a gamble, but it's also possible that they'll be here quickly enough to be really helpful. And I know that a lot of town residents are interested in having us get a hold of these. People who've heard about it have been coming to meetings and talking about it, and sending us emails.
So I don't think a purchase decision is the hard decision. I think, however, that the distribution question is a hard question, and I'd like to have a little bit more than we'll think about it in the future to go on. The other thing that I think is sort of interesting, it goes to your how many question. If the community or the communities of Dover and Sherburne, whichever way you want to think about it, if the community is experiencing the spike in COVID, Omicron, whatever, and everybody's having difficulty getting testing kits, and to ask two parents who are probably working to stand online someplace for a couple of 3 or 4 hours to get a testing kit for their kid, I certainly understand why sending the kid to the school would be an option. So why aren't we thinking about the town rather than just segments of the town?
You mean for distributing tests?
Yeah. Why would we get enough tests to sort of be a backup for the community?
Well, we certainly could. The question is, do we? I wish we knew how long it would take to get them, and I wish we knew what was going to happen with Omicron in the meantime. But if we think we could get them fairly soon, that is in the next week or two, it would be great to distribute them widely. I mean, that would be a wonderful thing to do. I know that people who have resources, both financial and time, and are somewhat tech savvy, are able to get the test. They just are struggling to do that. But they are struggling, and I think lots and lots of people would appreciate it if we handed some out free.
Right, and then the second piece of that would be something that you guys have to talk about. Distribution becomes, how do you do it? You talked about Mr. Adams having staff problems. right? If we take on a distribution work, the hows and whos and whys are important questions to address.
Yes, they are. Yep, absolutely.
And I'd like to have sort of a sketch of how that might work. You know.
Well, our thought was when we were thinking about having, ordering 1,000 kits and trying to target them to the schools and for the childcare centers and the seniors, is that we might actually either set up a system where we had them stored, some of them stored at the schools, and distributed some to the childcare centers and allowed them to then distribute them to individuals, or perhaps keep some in the Board of Health. You have the Board of Health staff. We now have 2 administrative assistants in the Board of Health office, so they could conceivably handle some of them. I don't think that would work if we were passing them out to all of town residents who wanted them. I think it would be overwhelming.
You know what I mean?
What?
If we were not necessarily a port of last resort, but we had a supply that we could distribute to people who needed them, so that they wouldn't have to wait online, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So that it's a community. We should make sure we have enough test kits for members of the community should they need them.
Yeah. I do think the need is greatest for the kids and the schools, the childcare centers, and for the seniors. But I think other people would definitely appreciate them.
Yeah, I mean, you get community spread, right? If somebody gets it, I mean, there are instances where people are coming home from college or graduate school, coming home, and they carry the virus, and then somebody has to run around,
Yep.
biscuits. I mean, it's just commingling. It's the holidays. And
Yep.
obviously, to your point, a lot of this is related to the holidays and people commingling and people coming back. And that's another sort of wild card. But if we spend a little extra money and have a couple of extra kits, I don't think anybody's going to come after us with pitchforks and torches. But we need to have a little bit more thought about how this should work.
Well, I think we should have more thought, but I don't want to delay ordering. I would like, what?
How many?
Well, I mean, one possibility is that we go ahead and order 1,000 kits today, and then we decide very soon to order more. I don't know how often you meet, but
every 2 weeks.
Every 2 weeks. So that
work with the town administrator and come up with a number, and we could get that information. I mean, we could sort of, and I'm speaking just off the top of my head because I always do that. We could sort of provisionally say, yeah, we approve it, pending you guys give us a number, and we consider the entire community, and then work on distribution and how that would work. I don't know, John, would that be okay, you think?
Yes.
Robin, is that what you?
Right, I can just relay my personal experience on how difficult it is to get your hands on tests. And so you can get tests, you pay top dollar to get tests quickly. And, 2 tests aren't enough because you kind of need to test every couple of days.
That's right.
And so before you know it, you've gone through 5 or 6 kits. And, I was just fortunate that an Amazon order that I placed came earlier than they had said it would arrive. And then I found a website where you pay a lot to get the tests, but they delivered the tests overnight. So I bought them. But, other than that, if you got to a CVS just when they got an order and you got lucky, you could buy 2 kits. So it's very difficult to get them when you need them.
Yeah.
So Kate, then, as far as PCR tests, in order not to wait in line, you can get appointments at CIC Health. And they do have a drive-through at the MBTA station at Riverside, which is pretty close to us, but they do not accept insurance. So if you make a decision to do that, it's 100% out of pocket for those tests, but you get your results in 12 hours.
So Kate, in the interest of
This
time.
is all the information I was able to gather over my holiday.
Well, and you know, the aggravating thing is that in 3 weeks, that'll be outdated and it'll be
Exactly.
something else. Yeah.
Right. So Kate, yeah, we could talk a lot about all the different aspects about this for a long time. And I appreciate your time. And I just want to get to the motion, to get the motion presented, do it properly. And I think we're all in agreement that it's an important item, and it's not a lot of money, and it's something we should have. I do think, as we have all three of us said in a different way, we'd like to have more structure behind this. We'd like to get more of the structure and the strategy from you, from your board. We don't want to stand in the way. We don't want to delay it. And I think we're all in agreement for that. We don't want to delay the purchase of these because it's an important item, and it's something I think that in the interest of all of our constituents you're asking for, and I think we're all in agreement of that. So I'm going to make the motion to move this along, and then ask you, once we have voted on this and once we've completed the process, to please come back to us, whether it's at our next meeting or through Chris prior to our next meeting, and give us a little bit more clarity and color and depth with regards to the items that we've been discussing this evening. Robin and Bob, are you okay with that?
So I just want to make sure I understand your motion, because the motion I would like to vote on is to not delay the purchase of the 1,000 kits. So to do that now, but I would like Kay to work with Chris, because I do think 1,000 kits are going to disappear in no time. And I do like the idea of community outreach, because I think it is very stressful when you have a positive case to try in your household to get your hands on enough tests, or if you know somebody was in contact with the person that was positive. So I would like to be able to alleviate the stress to the rest of the citizens of Dover. And to me, that means more than 1,000 kits, but I don't want to delay the 1,000 kits. So I'd like to do 1,000 now, and then, because you're not gonna get them tomorrow.
Right.
No, we're not.
So I would take Robin's position, but I'd make the number 2,000.
Okay.
I can support 2,000.
Okay. So let's do this. Let's just segment it this way. I move to approve the purchase of COVID-19 rapid test kits as recommended by the Dover Board of Health using American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funds for the immediate purchase of 200 test kits.
No,
2,000.
I'm sorry, 2,000. I apologize. 2,000. Thank you.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye, John Jeffries.
Aye, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springett.
Go get your order in now.
All right.
So and give us and then you better come back through Chris to tell us how you're going to handle all this stuff.
Yeah, we will.
Okay.
So Kate, you and I can talk about ordering tomorrow. Is that right? And then we'll talk about distribution.
Robin has
Monday.
Okay, Robin has a secret black card that she uses to order things, and Amazon comes like the next day. So see if you can borrow that from her. She's really good at that stuff.
I would love to.
What I can do is I am now an expert at self-administering antigen tests.
So if I have a problem, I'm coming up to your house and you can administer. Yeah. All right, good.
5 times this way, 5 times this way, stick it in the tube.
Okay,
I'm sure there's a black market for these tests.
Yeah, but we're a government. We have to go, through the front door.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you all.
Have
Thanks,
a
Steve.
nice night, Kay. Thank you very much.
Please thank Steve and Jerry as well.
I appreciate your support very much.
Okay. Please thank Jerry and Steve as well.
I shall. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Good night.
we are going to move on to our next item, which is the Board of Selectmen updates. So we've heard a lot from Hale. We've heard a lot about open space. There's really nothing more to add with regards to that from an update standpoint. One thing that I just want to mention real quickly, because we've had a very full jam-packed agenda this evening, is we have on our town website, Kate has posted the center survey, the Dover Center survey. Kate, did I say that correctly?
The village center.
The village center.
It's a town center. We're not a village.
It's called the village.
I've been to the village. It's in New York City.
The Dover Center survey. Please complete. Take 5 minutes of your time and complete the Dover Center survey. So there's really nothing specific to add other than to say that everything that you've heard this evening about Hale and open space, they're working in close collaboration with both boards and both task force, the task force and the board. And we are looking forward to the 11th, that I hope everybody will join the January 11th Hale Task Force meeting. Bob, anything you'd like to add?
No, I was going to talk about TAB, but Chris covered it perfectly well. The other thing that was sort of going on is there's probably be a meeting on Carol coming up this month, but I haven't seen anything yet. And I know they were talking with Mike Angieri about sizing the two issues. They were talking to him about sizing the septic. I think we have sort of like the current plan is for a 7,000 gallon tank, septic tank. And Mike thought, given a 100-year life of building, or given the fact that we have a 100-year life of the current building, they might want to consider a larger tank, given that the usage going forward through time may change. And I think they had a meeting on that today, but I don't know the outcome. And then the second thing that came up was in regard to, let's talk about it as food services, even though we're not really going to do a food service. It's sort of a warming kitchen. They were worried about if there was a way to build into your design ways to make the facility, particularly, I guess, the kitchen area, sort of impervious to infiltration by other undesirables besides me, things like, insects and stuff like that. And I don't know if there's been a resolution on that, but again, I know there was a meeting today at 10. I just, I don't know the outcome. Other than that, at the last look, it was Carol was moving right down the path on their timeline.
Excellent, thank you. Robin?
Everything has been covered. I have nothing to add.
Carol just sent a text to the group that the savehale.org site has been established, and it's been done by a gentleman named Craig Benson, who's a Dover resident. It's really well done. If you haven't visited so Carol, thank you for that reminder. If you visit the Hale website, on their very first landing page, you'll see that they mention the CR. They go into detail about how the CR will affect Dover and Westwood. And they also have a link to the actual language of what a CR does on the mass.gov website. So it's something that's really coming together. Craig Benson is a mountain bike friend of mine, and he's part of a much larger group than just my local mountain biking group that utilizes Hale. His kids use it. He's got elementary school age kids, as does a lot of people in his group. Many of the people that are in the really close group of the Save Hale organization are not Dover residents. And one of the really good things that this has done, it's brought a lot of attention from the Dover residents and outside the Dover residents. So Carol, thank you for that reminder. Anything you'd like to add, Carol?
Nope, sorry, I was on mute. Folding laundry. No, I think not, thanks.
Thank you. Chris?
As we look at the board's upcoming agendas, the only thing that strikes me is that the 20th looks like a pretty robust meeting. And if we're looking to add Hale and potentially even the Board of Health to come back with a distribution presentation for you, I wonder if the board would be okay with moving the Board of Fire Engineers presentation as well as the Aquarian Water Company update, perhaps to February 3rd. Everything else on the 20th would need to stay. We can put everything. I just wanted to propose it to the board, or at least bring it up for discussion.
So Chris, one of the things that we talked about at a point in time was we'd rather have an extra meeting rather than a very long meeting. And I think that was the consensus of the board. Don't look like that, Robin. You participated. So if we could, I think Colonial Water, an update from them, given what's been going on.
Aquarian now.
Aquarian now is sort of something that should really be teed up sooner rather than later. And I'm just wondering if we could have a meeting next Thursday and cover some of those issues rather than push it off to February. Again, that's just, or after the next January meeting. Keeping the meeting to an hour and a half or so, or 2 hours. I mean, people can retain focus. So I think that's right. And so just making the second meeting, the February meeting longer, it may or may not work, because if we get back into a discussion around warrant articles and town meeting options, that might also fill up. So I would suggest we take the next January meeting and break it into two additional January meetings. Either the week before the 23rd or the week after, and then we just go on with life.
Oh, it's the 13th or the 27th.
Okay.
And I was going to make the same comment. I mean, even this evening, we've had a lot of information, and I'm tired now.
Yes.
So
Yeah, it's really hard to stay focused. I agree. It's difficult.
Right. So either of those work for me, the 13th or the 27th. It might be easier to do it the 27th, just so to give us extra time to prep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm good too. So, John, you have conflicts?
I don't have any conflicts, so I'm good either way.
So we'll leave it to Chris.
Does the board have any preference as it relates to Hale, Board of Health, or Aquarian, or do you want to just leave it to me to work with everybody, see who's ready and just
coordinate?
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Whatever makes sense. And
Chris, if the new people from Aquarian are, if they have time constraints or whatever, obviously for us, I think we're all on the same page with regards to the Board of Health. Is the important part is getting the test kits. The other part is the strategy and the implementation and the execution part of that. That's, I think we're all in agreement. That's a moving target, and it's never going to be perfect, but we want to be as right as possible.
Yeah, but that's the make or break piece. The buying is easy, right?
Yeah.
But I would argue the most critical path is getting your order in now, because you have no idea how long it's going to take. So.
Yeah, that we took care of. That went along okay.
So Chris,
do you have some observations you want to share on what to do, or are you going to let us know as you dig into it a little bit?
Well,
go ahead, Robin.
I don't think we should do it tonight. This meeting's long enough, so let Chris figure it out, and he can figure it out. He suggested, I don't know, breakup of the meeting,
future agenda,
position of the meeting.
We'll do that.
Okay.
Thanks.
So that allows us to move on to the next item.
It does. It does. So
my Adobe keeps crashing, so I have to keep reopening the agenda. I don't know what is going on here.
So Robin, consent agenda, approval of the 2022 IRS mileage reimbursement rate, awarding washed sand bid, which I know is going to be the highlight of your evening.
It is.
Approve the special one-day liquor license, which is the highlight of Bob's evening, for January 8th, 29th, February 1st, 5th, 11th, 12th, all of 2022. Approve November 16th, 2021 open session meeting minutes, which Mona did a fabulous job on. I move to approve the consent agenda as presented and ask for a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, John Jeffries.
Aye, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springett.
And we just have to do the motion for adjournment and for...
That's the hardest one.
Yes, the hardest one. So I'm scrolling down. I apologize for the executive session. The board members will enter into executive session to discuss telecommunication lease negotiations with AT&T and discuss the contract negotiation with the town administrator. For this, we require a roll call vote. So I move that the board enter into executive session, not to return to open session, to discuss telecommunication leases with AT&T and to discuss contract negotiation with the town administrator. Further, as chairman, I declare that an open meeting discussion may have a detrimental effect on the negotiation position of the town administrator, and call for the roll. I, John Jeffries.
Aye, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springett.
We are going to meet on the next Zoom. And does everybody have the passcode and the...
Yeah, well, I practiced before this Zoom. I dialed into that Zoom.
I'm taking a 5-minute break.
We will
martini and olives.
We will reconvene in 4 minutes. How's that?
Sounds good.
Good night, everyone. Kate, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining this evening.